Welcome back. Centrist Democrats will run Germany's government as opposed to centrist leftists, this after winning yesterday's highly anticipated elections. President Trump celebrated that victory at a post online, writing in part, "This is a great day for Germany and for the United States," although he may not be talking necessarily about the governing coalition coming to be. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Friedrich Merz is the man poised to be Germany's next chancellor, and he has said upon this election result that he wants Germany to act and think more independently from the United States, asserting that the Trump administration is, quote, largely indifferent to the fate of Europe. Tim Ross joins me now. He's the chief political correspondent in Europe and the UK for Politico. Tim, it's great to have you with us. Thanks for joining me. What is, as someone in America watching this election in Germany, the biggest, most important set of takeaways?
Well, first of all, it's very important to note that Friedrich Merz, who will be Germany's new leader, is maybe the friendliest leader the US could ever hope for. He's been to America more than 100 times by his own reckoning. He used to work there as a corporate lawyer. He worked for BlackRock and likes the place a lot. In fact, he counts Ronald Reagan as one of his kind of heroes politically. That said, he is taking the job at an incredibly difficult time for the transatlantic relationship, and he's had to really reassess the role of America when it comes to Europe's security in the last couple of weeks in light of what President Trump has been saying. And he is now absolutely clear that Europe needs to stand on its own 2 feet and be independent. His word was independence. We need to be independent of America in the future because he says America doesn't care anymore about Europe.
What does that look like, Tim? And I know that's a hard question to answer. The German economy has been struggling for the last 2.5 to 3 years. It's part of the underlying tumult that has led to the popularity of the AfD, Alternative for Deutschland, Alternative for Germany. What does independent, strong Germany look like with all these underlying problems?
Well, to an extent, it's also about Europe, not just Germany. And I think one of the points you make is very important, and that's the rise of this far-right force, the far-right Alternative for Deutschland party, which is a real threat to Friedrich Merz, the new center-right leader of Germany. And he will be worrying that that far-right party will be after his votes and they will take over potentially. He's already said maybe this is the last chance to keep them out of power. And when it comes to the next election, he will be very concerned that they might take over. But when it comes to what it means to be independent, he's talking very specifically about defense. He's even looking potentially to a structure beyond NATO, and that would be a huge deal, really, for European security and for the world. He says that Donald Trump has been so unreliable in the things he's said recently about European security that the Europeans, and he will be a leading voice in this debate, need to look beyond NATO to potentially create a new structure entirely.
A new structure entirely, would that possibly mean, and I've seen some articles suggesting this, that if President Trump and the administration of the United States is rethinking the utility of the post-World War II set of transatlantic alliances, maybe Europe ought to beat them to the punch and say we're going to take care of ourselves in our own way and perhaps negotiate with Russia in our own ways, negotiate with China in our own ways, and define our security in our own ways. Could it go that far?
That is certainly the moment that if you're on this side of the Atlantic, you feel like you're currently facing. And I think certainly for Friedrich Merz, Germany's new leader, one of the things he's talked about is doing a kind of nuclear weapons deal with Britain, which obviously has nuclear weapons, and with France, so that somehow those 2 nuclear powers can provide an umbrella to protect Europe in the way that he thinks America won't in future. That's a very powerful, eye-catching idea, and it's one that I believe people in both Paris and London will want to consider, along with Berlin, in the weeks and months ahead. I mean, we're not talking about hanging around here. This is a very live debate right now. And the simple reason for that is Donald Trump's approach to Ukraine. And he has made it absolutely clear he wants that deal with Russia quickly. That has set the alarm bells ringing across Europe about what it means for European security and whether they can rely on the US at all.
And very quickly, Tim, what is the sense there about the future prospects politically of the AfD, Alternative for Deutschland party?
Well, I think They have had an absolutely stunning victory from their point of view over the last 24 hours. They've doubled their vote share since 2021. They've gone from about 10% to 21%. And if they carry on that trajectory, they're really not very far off potentially from winning and becoming the biggest party. And that's obviously the kind of nightmare scenario for centrists. And really, I think what will come now very much into focus is whether Merz and the coalition he leads over the next 4 years can deliver for voters. If they can't, voters will want to look elsewhere, and that's potentially going to be to the advantage of the far-right AfD in 2029.
Tim Ross with Politico, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.